Casey got a big hand from the crowd. Pitch is outside for a ball. Because most of them had read in the newspapers about Casey's show after the game yesterday, in the midst of a rainstorm and an electrical storm, and they stood there under an umbrella and did the show. Pitch is outside for a ball. It's 2-2 now. And then when the show was over and Casey started back to the dugout in a downpour, there was a youngster soaked there in the box seat area asking for an autograph. So Casey stopped and autographed the scorecard for the youngster in the midst of the downpour. 2-2 pitch. Swung on, and it's foul ball right down into the third batter's box, and the count holds at 2-2.
Welcome to the BBA Today, your podcast that covers events around the Brewster Baseball Association every day with your host, Yellow Springs 9 General Manager, Ron Collins. And now, let's get on with the show.
Hey, welcome to episode 6 of the podcast. I think it's really been a whole lot of fun here so far, and I expect today's episode will be equally fun or better, raising the bar for all others that come next. Today, I have with me the general manager of the Calgary Pioneers, Kevin Dickson, and the commissioner and general manager of the Nashville Bluebirds, Matt Rectenwald. Thank you guys for your time today. This is going to be a whole lot of fun.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, good to see you again.
There you go. I thought that what we would do today is spend a little bit of time talking about what I consider in my brain the topsy-turvy nature of the league this year. You take a look at every division, and you see teams in that upper tier that you weren't expecting to see, and you see teams at the bottom tier that you weren't expecting to see. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time and essentially kind of get out of the way and let you two guys ruminate for the most part about what you see that is weird and topsy-turvy, and then we'll kind of go from there. So, Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, that there's teams that are doing very well that you wouldn't expect. In my division, for instance, Wichita is not normally toward the top of the division, and teams that aren't doing so well. I mean, Vegas and Boise and myself, we're fighting to get to 500. And Vancouver is doing terrible in their division, and Montreal's leading theirs. So just goes to show how balanced in some ways the league has become. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I was going to point to some of the same teams you did, particularly Montreal, the success they've had early in a division that we all pretty much thought was New Orleans and Rockville, like usual. Well, also say in the Frick League, we're looking at, Twin Cities, 25-11. Not sure too many people had that one pegged.
I did not.
Yeah.
No.
No, and on the other side of things, Vancouver 11-24 in the Pacific. Boise 17-19, Vegas 17-18. A lot of topsy-turviness right now. We're at mid-May, so give it another few sims here, and we should be at a point where this is the real thing.
And then you've got Edmonton at 28-8.
Right.
Yeah, 28-8 is a pretty strong set of numbers right there.
They've had some pretty crazy success.
Well, what do you think is going on there? Because you mentioned Kevin in your division, right? Wichita and San Antonio you mentioned, and Matt kind of bled into the idea of early sample size. We're in mid-May. It's not quite April, and it's not quite June or July when things you'd think would be kind of more settled. But at the end of the day, you look at what San Antonio's doing, right? They're essentially kind of leading the league in hitting and pitching, batting average at least, if I'm remembering my scans right. And Wichita's a power factory up in the upper tier of home runs, so it's not like they're not getting some elite level performances. What are your thoughts about? I mean, are these two possibly real?
I think San Antonio is real. Rivera is off to an amazing start, 6-0, but this is about the point he got hurt last year. So a healthy Rivera is a big step forward for them pitching-wise. And then offensively, I traded him Puckett, which gives him a good leadoff player, and then Stinson is showing why he deserves to be up. So San Antonio, I think, is definitely for real. Wichita,
I got to take some
not
credit
quite
for
sold
San
out.
Antonio. Sorry to interrupt. He had every plan to keep Stinson in the minors again this year. And I said, Mike, he goes, why should I have him up? I'm like, you should have had him up last year. Bring the kid up and stop overthinking it. So I hope he's happy.
Well, I would imagine he's pretty happy with how he's doing so far.
Yeah. And sorry, back to Wichita.
Yeah, I'm not sure on Wichita.
Well, here's the deal on Wichita. They're showing a winning record right now. They've actually given up more runs than they scored. It's usually a trend towards not so good. If we're looking on Stats Plus, they're at the base runs page. Wichita's projected out for X-win-loss record of 17-19 right now. They're performing 3 wins above that.
Well, I've definitely helped him out on a few of those. I'm trying to look at what my record is against Wichita, but I know they took me to the cleaners.
Also interesting on that page is Edmonton is actually performing 6 wins ahead of expected.
Yeah,
Ron, you'll be happy to know the best team in the league by X-wins base runs is Yellow Springs.
Oh yeah, well that and $5 will get me a ticket into the Starbucks to watch the Landis next year.
Right.
Yeah, Wichita, I'm looking up, is 5-3 against me, so they've got a winning record against me. And I've also done my part to help Edmonton out. I swept a series from them, but that was the end of that.
Yeah,
So,
what do we think about the in the Atlantic? What do we think about Atlantic City's offense? Montreal's pitching. I feel kind of dumb not thinking through Montreal because for a couple of years I've been watching Montreal's farm system come in, and I think I've just been kind of awed with the New Orleans Rockville juggernaut. I feel like I've missed both Montreal and Atlantic City in particular. Do you guys have any thoughts about why they are where they are? Are those two teams real? Atlantic City's offense is like off the charts.
Juan Rivera,
for sure. Not much you can't say about a guy with a 1.220 OPS.
20 homers already.
Unreal. And then you look at Randy Bader, their catcher.
Yeah.
This has kind of come out of nowhere. Well, he came out of the Las Vegas farm system, but that's either here nor there.
That's kind of nowhere.
Right.
And he's a guy that doesn't look that good on paper except for his gap power.
This dude, I threw him in, I think it was the last season I was there. Traded for Reese Wareham down the stretch and gave him Randy Bader as a throw-in. So he's doing well. You know, Keith Dean is always doing well. Salazar. They've got a stable of bats. And their pitching's doing just well enough.
Yeah, so their pitching's definitely weak, but when you're scoring that many runs, 222 runs scored already. That's pretty impressive. And they're in second, so who's in first?
Well, that's Atlantic City. So, while we've all been wowed by the shiny object, Aldo and Gonzalez and all their young hitters that came up, all of a sudden they've got the best pitching in the league.
Yeah, Montreal.
And a lot of these are guys who, like Geistman, for example, he's been around for a while, but really hasn't broken through to the point that he has so far this year. Lance Harrison is a rookie for them, doing awesome. Ando.
Yeah, let me riff off of that for just a second, Matt. If we look at this, what I introduced as topsy-turviness, Is it really topsy-turviness? Is this a factor of just a lot of young players that people aren't really paying attention to coming up, and so some of these teams are better than we expected them to be just because of human nature? Human nature is, wow, this team was really great last year, they'll be great again next year. This team was dog meat last year, they'll be dog meat this year. How much of that plays into this?
Well, I think with Montreal specifically, it's, there's just so many good young players on this team. It's hard to keep track of that many. So, maybe you look at these top specs that are coming up from them, and all of a sudden they've also got like 7 young pitchers who are rated 50 to 70 that have come up. So we probably should have expected this. And if this is an end result of things working the way we hope they would, which is the bad teams getting good young players and then rising up, then this is all a good thing.
Oh, there you go. Well, I mean, I know that Kevin Spencer, the GM before Jeffrey, was doing a lot of work on the minors, so that's a remnant of some of that aspect too. So I'm kind of getting the flavor from you two that Montreal is probably real, Atlantic City is possibly real, depends on a few things. What do you think about in the Pacific with San Fernando and Valencia and Portland all kind of up in the mix where they weren't really expected? Are these teams real, or is this something else going on?
Kevin, go ahead.
Does it matter in the Pacific? The Pacific is clearly the weakest division we've got. I'd love to play in the Pacific. So California is as good as anybody else out there. But I think there's 3 teams in each of the other divisions that clearly would be in first place if they were in that division. No offense intended, Pacific, but let's be honest here.
You heard it here. The general manager of the Calgary Pioneers says the Pacific are dog meat. I like this guy.
I mean, San Fernando, that's rebuilding, is in second place.
He's in second place largely because Vargas is hitting like 800 this year.
And Maldonado has 18 homers.
He's got no pitching whatsoever.
Right.
With Valencia, too, their bullpen is so abysmal. I can't see them doing anything unless they shore that up. Now, the team that's actually the coldest right now in that division is the one that I keep an eye on, and that's Hawaii.
Yeah, because they've got the pitching.
Yep. Portland, they're getting better. They're certainly not in contention for anything right now. Seattle's played a little bit better of late. It's weird to see Seattle doing it all with pitching and really no offense to speak of.
He's had good pitching for a while, but his offense is not what it used to be.
Right.
And Long Beach is, at the bottom looking up, but we know that Long Beach will come back.
Yeah. So what do we think in the Heartland? I think the main team that is the outlier is the Twin City River Monsters that somebody mentioned earlier on. Is Twin City for real? Or are we still in this middle of sample size issues?
Twin Cities has the most runs scored in the entire league. They also have the highest base running quotient. They're plus 6.8 in base running and a decent bullpen. Now, looking at their lineups, nobody's sticking out like being hugely overperforming. So
your top hitter's at 311 and you're first in runs scored.
Right. Looking at their pitching, the 5 they've got in their rotation right now have been really solid. The bullpen, there's nobody sticking out as being truly horrible except for Ragnar Lothbrok with his 8.89 ERA. This might be a real team. And looking through their roster, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with Scott in GM's Corner earlier on, and I think he's got a team that I admire quite a bit, and that is a team where almost everybody contributes but very few just like superstars that stand out, right? So it's a really interesting. I called it a work-a-day team at the time. I've got my eyes out. I wish I could say that they were not for real in the Heartland, because the Heartland is already like a buzzsaw, but I think that they are probably for real. Let me throw this out to you guys. We've gone through a bunch of teams, and some of these teams are actually for real. Some of them aren't. We might be right and wrong in different places. Why is it that you think that we're seeing this kind of this churn, right? What's going on? Is it raw random luck? We've had a lot of things going on in the league for the past couple of years, so let me quit rambling on forever. And Kevin, Matt, what are your thoughts on why we're seeing this?
I think the biggest reason is that we've got every team being run by somebody that knows how to run the team. There's no weak GMs, and so everybody's getting the most out of. Like you mentioned, Twin Cities. There's no that could be a team with no all-star that could compete for the division championship because he's putting the pieces together properly. And there just aren't any patsies when it comes to.
Yeah, Matt.
What do you think, Matt?
Two things I'd also point out. One, we're seeing the results of the mega draft come into play here, as we kind of alluded to with Montreal. The other thing, as we've been trying to get the pitching in order, league settings wise, we're also missing a lot of the depth that has gone over to the UMABA.
Well, especially depth at certain positions.
Yep, particularly relief pitching and bottom of the rotation depth.
Well, and catchers and good hitting center fielders, at least I seem to not be able to find those.
Yeah, I think that's probably, there's a lot to be said for that, because the UMABA becomes kind of a quad A, triple A as a baseline, but then their stars are guys that we would usually be plugging into positions. So I think that is definitely an interesting idea. The other thing that I think we threw around earlier on is quality. Kevin mentioned no bad GMs, right? We have GMs who will make mistakes, but they have plans and they're putting things together. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the impact of the UMABA on that. How do you feel about that idea?
Well, the guys are, they've had a proving ground, if you will. They've had their intro to the Brewster, if you will. They understand how the league works. They understand how our systems work. They come in, they're ready to go. Whereas in the past, they may have come in and, been a little hesitant to make their own moves or step on anyone's toes or make deals, make the bold decisions. I feel like the UMABA has given us a very high success rate with new GMs coming in.
Yeah, I would agree to that. We had the EBA, but at the end there, it got to be rapid turnover. And with the UMABA, it seems like the only turnover is when they come over into the BBA. Right. And they're very active on the forums, both in posting and clearly active in reading and learning from posts from years past.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch because it feels to me like they're creating their own little subculture of guys, and in conversation with a couple of their...
I think we call it a cult.
There you go, a cult. The UMABA cult. I like that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. The other thing that I'm wondering your thoughts on, something else that's happened over the last 5 years or so, it seems like, is that the free agency classes are growing a little bit better. Players are asking for more money. The salary cap seems to come into play a lot more for popping. Maybe this is me being sensitive to my situation because I'm running really close to salary cap right now, and I'm going to have to make some tough decisions. And I had to do that back in '37 with Lelouch and I lost 4 or 5 guys. So it seems to me like free agency classes are a lot stronger these days, and so some of the teams perhaps who are in the middle can find that one piece. If they're willing to perhaps overpay a little bit, they can find a piece that will get them over the edge. Is that something that you feel I'm making a reasonable argument, or am I kind of blowing smoke on that?
Well, personally, I am a victim of the cap myself the last couple of seasons. I had to let 2 pitchers go into free agency. Rodriguez really got overpaid on, but if I hadn't been up against the cap, I would have tried to keep at least one or the other. And the whole reason for trading Puckett away was about the cap, and Lynch as well. So, the cap's doing what it's supposed to do, and forcing people not to be able to hoard players.
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously, the demands have been a little bit higher but typically they come down throughout the year. And then when these guys get to free agency, we let the GMs make these decisions as opposed to the AI.
There you go.
Now, did anything change as far as the UMABA's reputation to enable them to be able to jump on some of these players that they got this year? Because they were able to sign some bench guys, guys that would be bench guys in the BBA.
So 2 things have changed over the last couple of years with the UMABA. One, they are considered a major league. And secondly, their reputation on a scale of 1 to 10 as compared to the BBA is at 9 now. I believe it started at 7.
Okay, that makes more sense. So
because they were able to compete for some of the middle of the road guys.
Right. It's working just like I'd like it to right now, where they're not going to be able to sign any of the real superstars unless they get, completely passed over for months and months at a time. But they're able to sign good players if they pay them a ton of money. Because those players are asking for a lot more to go to the UMABA than they would be in the BBA.
Sure.
I hadn't really looked at the contracts that they were getting. I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, and that makes quite a bit of sense right now as we look. This is outside of the topic of the podcast, I guess, but if we look into the next 4, 5, 10 years and talk about how the fictional business aspect of the UMABA grows, I could see some additional modifications of that and things like that. But that's clearly a long way away. What is closer, and what I'll try to end on here, is wanted to put forward an idea to you guys that came out of another one of the conversations I had with the general manager, is that looking at the topsy-turviness of what's going on right now, think about how topsy-turvy things are going to be in a year or 3 when this mega class goes to free agency. How many people are going to be able to manage to afford to keep those guys, and how many of those guys will roll into free agency? And whoa, Nelly, won't that be interesting for some of the lower teams? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, and on top of that, that's around the same time the Rule 6 is going to kick in, and we'll be able to skim on some guys from the UMABA.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, to say the least. Because there's starting to be some guys in the UMABA that are looking fairly appealing to switch over to the BBA.
There you go.
It's all going to happen at once. It's going to be a free-for-all. So cooler heads, as always, will prevail.
But if you've got some folks that have managed their cap really well, they could get really good in one season really quickly.
There you go. Well, I think we'll be out on that. I appreciate it. I think it's been a really fun episode. And,
I do want to plug one thing.
Oh, go for it.
If I could. Hansky's Maple Barbecue Beef Brisket Sandwich.
Oh, yeah.
Those are to die for. You absolutely have got to try one.
I saw that.
Hometown guy runs the place. Smokes those things all day long.
Jack Hansky, who used to play for the Marauders?
No, he's a bit on the old side now. It's his son, who only played here 1 year. That was a.
Oh, that's right.
He had a 10 or 11-year career as a pitcher. But he runs the place now, and boy, those things are good. In fact, I think I'd like to have one a day.
We'll put her right up there against the Nashville hot chicken sandwich.
None of it can beat the Big Niner. Now I gotta go eat.
That sounds like an Aerosmith record.
There you go. Alrighty, well, thanks for your time today, and I'll have to go.
You've been listening to the BBA Today, a podcast that covers the Brewster Baseball Association every day. Music is Bold Statement, available at BesleyandStudios.com and use low attribution. Be safe and well, and we will hear you again tomorrow.